Good afternoon, baseball fans. It is Thursday. I almost said October. Good night. November 9th. It's not baseball season. It is off season, Susie, off season. So I am Susie. This is Bourbon and Baseball, and that is Kenny. Oh, sorry, my mic just went out. Kenny VanDoren of the Astros Future podcast. Kenny, thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate you humoring all of my dumb questions about minor league stuff and the AFL games, all of it. We're going to get into a lot of it today because I have lots of questions.
They're never dumb questions. I have a high school friend that is actually in the minor league system for the Guardians, and he messages me questions all the time because sometimes he doesn't know what's
Cool.
going on or how the Rule 5 draft works. A lot of people don't. Yeah, it's overcomplicated because it's baseball, and that's just how they have to make it.
Good. But the makers of baseball were like, we're going to test people's IQ. Let's see what we can confuse people on. Good. So if you don't know, you should check into all of the Astros Future podcasts because they've got great information over there, and you do player interviews with the minor leaguers. Yes.
Yes, and more recently, I've just been writing a lot more as well. That's what I went to school for, was to write, and so I have a couple feature stories. A lot of guys from the Arizona Fall League that have come out, and just other stuff that happened throughout this past season. And I'm looking to get back into the podcast stuff right now. Or my good friend Jimmy Price, who is Astros Future, that is literally him. He is kind of taking a little bit of break. He has a lot of work stuff right now, but we're gonna get back in the swing of things in the off season and have a little bit more interviews for anyone that's interested.
Perfect. I'm super excited. I know about taking hiatuses because I took a really long one during the actual season. So everyone's like, Susie, where did you go? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm dying. Don't kill me. Anyhow, so let's get into it then because originally I had questions on Joey Luperfido, right? Was that interesting how to start? Okay.
Yep.
So on Twitter, it will always be Twitter. I will never reference it as X. I'm very sorry about that. On Twitter, I saw that Kenny had posted that Joey Luperfido had been removed from the AFL.
Oh, that was Zach DeZenzo. Sorry to interrupt. That's Zach DeZenzo. Yeah.
Just kidding, Zach DeZenzo. Not Joey Luperfido. But I have questions on him too. So we'll circle back on that one. About what, like, he got removed from the. I was like, wait, he's in the AFL game. Like, I was very confused. So kind of tell the people what the AFL is. Like, I was under the impression that it was like just the game, but apparently it is not. And now, is it just all of the people go? Is it like a set number from each team that go? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's seen as more of a coveted league for prospects that need those extra time, they need those extra innings, games played. For a guy like Zach DeZenzo, it was, he missed a month practically in July, right when he was getting hot, right when he got to Corpus Christi. Undisclosed injury, undisclosed matter of what happened, but he ended up missing a month, and that's why they wanted to give him an extra look. Plus, as a 12th rounder, he's been more than what you've ever expected. And for Zach Zendo, the power was always there. He was a shortstop. Now he's moved to third base, playing some first and some second base as well. And it was more about just getting him those at bats, getting him prepared for what's likely to be a non-roster invite when he gets invited to Major League Camp for spring training this year, which, I mean, that's feels like a given at this point. When I'll once we figure out who's getting protected from the Rule 5, I'll release my list of who I think it is. But getting back in the Arizona Fall League, teams get to send about 6, 7, 8 prospects. Depends on the year, depends on how many players each team gets to, what the Arizona Fall League, what Major League Baseball says you can do. And for the Astros, 5 pitchers ended up going, 3 position players. 2 of those pitchers got to be starters. You're granted 2 starters. The rest of them have to be relievers, even if they were starters during the regular season. The Astros' 2 starters were Jaime Melendez and Tyler Guilfoyle. Jaime Melendez pitched in 2 games, ended up re-aggravating his back injury that held him out really almost the full season. He told me that he's looking to get back into the swing of things this offseason, and he's not looking not to play in Mexico. He is a part of a winter league down there,
Okay.
part of a winter league team, but he told them that he just wanted to get prepared. He wanted a strong Arizona Fall League, and he got removed halfway through, unfortunately for him. But he's looking to get back in the swing of things, get another non-roster invite like he did this past year. He's a little bit on the younger side, 23 right now, out of AA, 24, going to be in this next season. He's looking to get into AAA, and he even said, like, if there's an opportunity there on the 40-man roster even on the in the majors, I want to be that guy. I mean, he's a good ground ball pitcher. He's been a little bit better with the strikeouts. Doesn't have high velocity, but he can paint the corners. Unfortunately for him, he was removed. And like Zach DeZenzo, a little bit banged up there at the end of the Arizona Fall League. Not disclose what happened, but the Astros pulled him more of a precautionary. He played in a good amount of games. Most of any of the Astros position players that went there, if he had appeared in 16 games, batted 231 with a 780 OPS, 3 home runs and 5 doubles. Those home runs were good as well. We know Zach DeZenzo for the power, high exit velocities, and that's what he showed. And it was good to just get this off season started. I tried to reach out to him to try to get a little bit more information. Didn't hear back at this time, but did write a little bit of a story about him earlier in the fall league. And it was more just improving himself, and that he, no matter where he was drafted, he wanted to prove himself that he could be this guy that could contribute to a major league team down the line. He could be the third baseman that, people always say who's going to replace Bregman. I have no idea. I mean, we don't even know if Bregman could re-sign one day.
Right.
There are talks there that, that's what they want. We don't know about what the talks are for the future. Zach DeZenzo can play third base. He can play second and first, but player development did say that they want Zach DeZenzo to focus at third base. Drafted as a shortstop, a lot of these guys they get moved around, and DeZenzo was one of those guys that they saw projected better as a third baseman.
So now, did you say that DeZenzo was from Corpus Christi? That's our AA team, yes?
So he started the season in high A, tore the cover off the ball, one of the best hitters. I think he ended, if he had stayed in high A the full season, which would have been a shame, it would have been like a real knock on player development, which they were good to move him as quickly as they could. He played in 31 games, batted 407 with a 1102 OPS. Absolutely killed the South Atlantic League as a 12th rounder. Throw those rounds out the window. This guy can just flat out hit, and that's what mattered. The funny thing was that he did play at a hitter-friendly ballpark in McCormick Field, known for a right field wall. He is left-handed, or he's a right-handed hitter, but the right field wall is less than 300 feet away from home plate down the corner, down the line. So it just shows you how old this is. I've been to the stadium too. Awesome. In a little bit of a neighborhood in Asheville, but he noticed that his 4 home runs he did have in Asheville were on the road. So he didn't even the whole player-friendly park didn't really even, or hitter-friendly park didn't play into it. Overall, Zach DeZenzo did have a good year. Unfortunate for him that he did miss a month, but he got some time back in the Arizona Fall League.
Okay, so now it can be any level of the minor leagues. It doesn't have to just be the AAA guys that are allowed to go. Is that correct?
Yeah, you don't really see a lot of the AAA guys go either. A lot of those guys are on the cusp of AA or just started in AA.
Oh, okay.
For Jaime Melendez, it's a lot of the injuries play a part too. Like Jaime Melendez missed most of the season. Zach DeZenzo missed a little bit as well. And then the other position player, one of the other position players, Miguel Palma, who's a catcher, whose future I don't necessarily see at the catcher position. He does struggle throwing out runners. He is, great. I mean, he's graded out well as a receiver and a game caller. It's just his arm strength isn't there right now. And that's why I kind of think first base or second base could be in the future, because he's just a flat out hitter too. He can not the most power in the world, but great contact skills. Didn't really show it as much in the Arizona Fall League. But answer your question, it can be anyone. And I wouldn't necessarily, a lot of teams don't really go after the AAA guys, but it's different everywhere.
Gotcha.
The Kansas City Royals, who I write a couple articles for Bally Sports, they sent 2 major leaguers, 2 guys that finished the season in the major leagues in September.
Really?
Necessarily because they wanted to get them more reps. Because when your rosters expand, you look at Hunter Brown and Yainer Diaz in 2022, especially Yainer Diaz didn't play a lot. And so, I mean, if the Astros might have thought about it, if he didn't go into the World Series and they weren't holding on to him, just get him that focus, maybe they thought about sending him there just to get him some more at bats, because you really just cut out a month of play. It's different everywhere, but for the Astros, it's more of those guys in high A or AA.
Interesting. So who were the other position players that the Astros sent?
So we talked about Zach DeZenzo, talked about Miguel Palma, who did have, did struggle a little bit, especially, I wanted to see a little bit more if the Astros player development could, have, pushed him to maybe play another position. There were only 2 catchers on the roster at the start of the fall league for the Mesa Solar Sox. There really wasn't an opportunity to move him around. And a lot of guys go there for position addition. JC Correa, Carlos Correa's brother, was there last year, and he played a lot of infield, and that was what he was always playing. But he moved to catcher, and that was his primary position. But he's played all over the place. Greg Kessinger is the primary one that I always think about. Back in 2021, Greg Kessinger played first base primarily in the Arizona Fall League, and then he didn't play first base ever again until AAA this year. And so that's just something that it keeps it around to see if they can do it. And I think he played an inning or a game or 2 in the major leagues at first base this year. And I mean, the
Yeah.
guy's just a Swiss Army knife defensively, and that's what they wanted. The last position player that ended up going was Kennedy Corona, which
Okay.
I was a little bit excited just to see how he played against maybe some higher level pitching, but a lot of the guys were going to be double A, high A around where he is in his own development. And the issue was for him is that he in the first game of the season, he slid back into first base and injured a finger. There was
Oh.
no like video for this game, and I watch all the ones that have the video just to see what's going on, and
Uh-huh.
maybe if there's an injury, especially just want to see what happened. And never got to see what happened. Found it a little bit later. He missed a good amount of weeks. Came back, had a pretty good day with a 3-hit game with a pair of doubles, a double and 2 singles, something like that, and looked strong. And the focus was for him is that he didn't miss time. He started off in high A, which is kind of, I mean, they just needed to put him there because there was a lot of guys in double A that they ended up releasing later down the road to make space to consistently get these guys games and at bats. But for him, it was like, prove that we can put you on the 40-man roster, prove that you're going to get an invite to Major League Camp. You had a 2020 season, 20 stolen bases, 20 home runs. Let's see what else you can do. And unfortunately for him, it just didn't pan out because of the finger injury. He came back. He's playing right now. We're recording here on a Thursday. I don't know necessarily when you post these, but today's the last day of the Arizona Fall League for them. The Solar Sox, the team they're on, aren't going to make the playoffs, which start Friday and Saturday. So he's going to be done after today, but very unfortunate for him. But I think when we talk about the Rule 5, he's a guy that needs to be protected. But he's also a guy, if he doesn't get protected and doesn't get selected in the Rule 5, he's going to get an invite to Major League Camp.
So, what position does Kennedy Corona play? Or
So he's
they play?
primarily, yeah, he's an outfielder. The funny thing about it is that people might not remember he was traded for Jake Marisnick, so he hasn't always been in Astro. They got him back in 2020 along with Blake Taylor, no
Okay.
longer in the organization. Recently got released in the past couple months, but
Pitcher, yeah.
yeah, left-handed pitcher. And so, sorry about that. So
That's
so yeah, when you kind of look at where Kenny Corona is going to be, he's an elite defender. Guy has a
okay.
lot of speed. Some of the people in the organization, we talked to someone in the organization on the podcast. Might have been Joey Loperfido. Someone, maybe I think it was Joey Loperfido said, if I could take anything, it would be like his speed. It might have even been Quincy Hamilton, who was also an outfielder in Double A this year. He's like they recognize the speed and the defense that he brings. I think right field is a great spot for Kennedy Corona. He has a good arm and he can have a good range as well. I mean, left field at Minute Maid Park is not necessarily for the best defender on the team. And I think right field down the line, if he makes it to the major leagues, could be the spot for him. Even in center field, he's just a streaky guy and he makes plays.
Interesting. Very cool. Okay. So now you've mentioned a couple of times the Rule 5 draft. I am a little confused on the Rule 5 draft. So can you explain to me what exactly that means? Because I know like everyone talks about the Rule 5 draft and they don't get taken, then like we can keep them, but like why? What is that?
So the main priority of the Rule 5 is that you don't hoard prospects and you
Okay.
don't put them on the 40-man too. Because there is very limited space on the 40-man to begin with, and they also just want players to move up. Like if you're not going to keep, say Joey Loperfido this year is if he say he's available, which he's not, to the Rule 5 draft, teams are going to want him. I mean, there's a lot of tools there that he could just skip the rest of the time in AAA, just put him in the majors, see what's going to happen. So it's like stopping the hoarding of prospects. Happens a little bit more with pitchers just because there's
Okay.
a lot of guys in high A and double A are throwing 98 miles an hour, 96. They see that and their team see that and they're like, okay, let's bring him up. Let's bring him into our major league camp, see what he can do. If he's not going to make our team, we'll just send him back. And it's more of like, it's kind of like a hassle to send him back to because the other team has to pay a certain fee, 20,000, something in that range. I don't have the specifics always on me, but you have to pay a fee. And if you're not going to pay it, then other teams get a chance to take them. It's a little bit complicated. If they don't make the roster, you have to send them back. But so the point of the Rule 5, so right now we're looking at anyone that was drafted in 2020 that's a college player
Okay.
is you are now like you can be in, you're going to be in the, I guess you need to be protected. I mean, you can go against the Rule 5 draft. I don't know. I'm not
Gotcha.
saying the correct verb about this, but you are now exposed to the Rule 5 draft. You need to be protected or you're going to be left unprotected. Guys who were drafted before that, you're
Uh-huh.
same thing, same boat. You've been in that boat for a couple years now. So it's anyone drafted in 2020 or signed as an international or high schooler in 2019 or drafted
Oh,
as a high schooler.
okay.
So a guy like Colin Barber, one of the top picks in 2019 for the Astros, was a high schooler. He was in Double A this past season. He could be drafted in the Rule 5 draft if not protected.
Oh, okay. So, Colin Barber, pitcher. Yes?
He's an
Oh,
outfielder, so
outfielder. Okay.
he's a left-handed hitting outfielder. Good pop there. He's battled a lot of injuries in his career as well. Shoulder surgery. Got to Double A this year. Missed a little bit of time for another undisclosed reason. Good contact skills. I like him as a defender as well. I think he's a sneaky defender. Maybe a little bit more average or fringe to some people. A little bit of a fringe runner, but he has all the tools. He's
Gotcha.
always had the tools. It's just about putting it together for him.
So, so if the Astros say, okay, we need to put so and so, so and so, and so on the 40 man, they're not on the 40 man, then they go into the Rule 5 draft. Is that
That is correct. And
okay?
so they stay in the organization. It's just like you have the Rule 5 draft happens and you have spots open on your 40-man roster at the moment. So the Astros could go in. I mean, everyone wants to say they're going to use those 3 spots.
Right.
It's 37 right now when we're talking. I don't think they're necessarily going to do that because there might be a pitcher out there that Dana Brown or someone in the organization sees like that's a project. Bring him in, lefty reliever. We already have one. Let's see what this guy can do. If it doesn't work out, send him back. The Astros haven't done that necessarily since I've been writing or talking about prospects because they usually have, they've had a stronger team. It's usually some of these smaller teams. Guy that always stands out to me is Thaddeus Ward, who's now with the Nationals.
Mhm.
He was one of the top picks last year. And I mean, he looks good. And that's just, he's pitching in the Arizona Fall League at the moment as well. So a little bit on the older side. He's has the experience, but they have him in the Arizona Fall League. And so the deadline to protect players is November 14th at 5 p.m. Central Time. I don't know if I don't believe the Astros are going to use all 3 spots. And I don't like, I get going on MLB Pipeline and I'm not trying to sound jealous and they're a competitor. They're above what I'm doing, but it's like, yeah, they're the top 30 on there. There's a big conversation last year. Is it going to be Jaden Murray? Is it going to be Christian Gonzalez? Who are they going to protect? Both those guys miss significant amounts of time this year with injury. Neither of them got protected. It was JP France, who made all the sense in the world to be a guy that you needed for depth, ended up being a really smart move to put him on the 40-man roster. He wasn't ranked in the top 30. Of course, he is a little bit older, probably doesn't have the strongest seasons, but the data is there. The stats are there that he's a high strikeout guy when he was in AAA. Made sense to protect him. You've tried him as a reliever. Can pitch 6-5 innings as a starter in the
Right.
Pacific Coast League. That made sense. And I understand looking at guys like Shea Whitcomb, Kennedy Corona, Miguel Palma, all these ones that you're reading, Zach Daniels, that are in the top 30. Necessarily, it's not going to beat all of them or even any of them. The Astros may not even protect anyone. I think it's always better to protect pitchers. The one guy
Okay.
that comes to mind is Misael Tamarez. You look at his numbers in AAA, ERA north of 5, north of 4. You're thinking, okay, yeah, whatever. This guy's not going to be good. He has some pitches and the way he pitches kind of profile similar to Christian Javier with the fastball. He's a similar build as well, kind of a lanky, muscular, a little bit built to him. Kind of looks the same when he pitches too because he wears the high socks like Javier has always done, and
I
that's why
love the
I
high
was.
socks. Love the high
And so
socks.
he does have that. And Mickey Story, who's the manager, who was the manager for the Space Cowboys this year, he's shown. He said before, he's like, I see him as a major league pitcher. I know maybe he's not going to be a starter. He can go give you 3 dominant innings, and he's a big, high, swing and miss guy. The numbers aren't there, but you got to look at those outings. He had 4 dominant innings. Then the last inning, he gets blown up and he gets the loss because he was pitching in the back end of a tandem. And that's really just what plays into that. And talking with guys in Sugarland, they point that out to me as well. It's like, there's a lot more to be seen in his stuff.
Than
You need to look
than
more
just
in
the
depth
numbers.
than
Okay.
just the numbers. Yeah. If you're just going to look
Okay.
at one outing, look at what happens at the end. Look at what happens at the beginning. Look how he responds. Look how it ends. Maybe he doesn't need to go 5 innings or a third time through the order. Maybe he just needs to go through 2 times through, and that's it.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
do like Misael Tamarez, though. I think there's a lot there to work with. He's in the 23, 24 age range now and had a great 2022 in Double A. He also battled a small injury as well. Never found out what it was. Looks like, it seems like everyone loves him as well, just as a teammate. I think he is the number 1 guy on my list, though. I just think a pitcher makes the most sense. Colin Barber and Kennedy Corona are also on there. I don't think they're going to protect Miguel Palma or Zach Daniels. And the question about Shea Whitcomb is that, yes, he hit the most home runs in minor league baseball last year. I don't necessarily know if they like what they saw from the strikeouts to the walk ratio. Kind of
Okay.
struggled a little bit with that. Power is there for a shortstop. That's a good thing to see. Defense is severely improved. Immensely improved. And
Mhm.
he's gotten a lot better defensively. He was the last pick in the 2020 draft. Of course, it was only 5 rounds.
Right.
Weird to think, though, that he's, moving up pretty quickly. And it was a big year for him. especially in AAA. And I talked to him a lot last year and talking about AA is like, you had a bad season last year. What happened? He was like, just nothing clicked offensively. I was behind on everything. But when that was happening, I'm just going to improve defensively. If I can't hit a lick right now, I'm just going to get better as a defender. Mike Ramazzotti, who's the infield coordinator for the Astros, he is very bullish on him, and he works with him in the offseason, likes what he sees from him moving forward. He might be a second baseman, maybe a third baseman in the future.
Okay.
I don't know if he necessarily attacks the ball all that great, as a shortstop. He's not the most aggressive guy. He's very laid back, very chill guy, just talking to him. But I think right now he's a shortstop, but I don't know if he's going to get protected. He could be seen in that Gray Kessinger range, but he does have a lot more power to him than those guys do. I mean, Gray Kessinger and David Hensley, and he's super utility. He could give you second, third, and shortstop.
Interesting. Okay.
That's where I kind of see Shea Whitcomb. I just don't necessarily know if they protect him. I also think there's probably some fringe relievers on the 40-man that if they really truly want to protect more guys and need space, they'll just DFA someone or outright trade, something like that.
Interesting. Okay, so, like, say for example, like Bennett Sousa that wasn't able to be on the postseason roster because we got him too late. Is that a guy that is on the 40-man, or
Yeah,
can
so he's on
he
the 40-man.
okay. So he's there, not a problem. Gray Kessinger
Mhm.
also there, not a problem. So is it like Joey Loperfido? Is he in this Rule 5 draft? Words are hard.
No.
Is
So
no,
he was
okay.
drafted in 2021. He was a
Okay.
seventh rounder out of Duke. And
Okay.
so in that 2021 class, everyone's scot-free right now. And that's good because the Astros have some pitchers in there, Rhett Koba, Colton Gordon, Spencer Arrighetti. It was a good class for pitchers. And there could have been another one in Chase McDermott who ended up being traded to the Orioles back in 2022 in that 3-team trade. And so I necessarily, those guys, you're not pushing to put them on the 40-man. There's no reason to select the contract of Spencer Getty or Colton Gordon right now. Those are
Gotcha.
guys you might see in your rotation down the line, and those two guys you see as a future. But at the same time, there's just no reason to rush it. Give them some time because those are both all those guys I just mentioned getting invited to Major League Camp. I would bet the house on it. Those are guys that are going to get that opportunity to be with the Major League staff,
Okay.
and if they break camp and they're like unstoppable and the Astros don't see anything that's going to, any reason to like not put him on the 40-man, then maybe they might think about it. If not, there's still a lot of guys that need to build up some innings, especially Rhett Koba, who was shut down at the end of the year just because he hit an innings limit. And he was just like, okay, we're going to send you home. Go to the strength camp in West Palm Beach. But right now you're done pitching. That might still need to be done for some of these guys.
Gotcha. Okay. So is there anyone so obviously Astros have a few holes, a couple holes to plug in our big league roster, backup catcher, apparently outfield, first base. Wait, what? But is there anyone that you feel like can come up from the minors and fill any of those holes, or maybe good trade bait? What are your thoughts on that?
Position player wise, I really think it's time for Will Wagner to break into something because unfortunately he did have the Hammett injury and he had the bone removed, the hook of the bone removed in his wrist, and so he missed some time in AA. Got up to AAA, killing it. I mean, it was a lot of contact. He's not the biggest power guy. I mean, he really flashed a lot of power in the fall league last year, which put him on the map to be invited to Major League Camp. And of course, as those who might not know, he is the son of Billy Wagner, and he was a late round pick in 2021, absolute steal out of Liberty. Fun thing about him is that he played a lot of second base in college, and then they
Okay.
brought him into camp. They did a velo day, throwing really hard across the diamond. They're like, "Why were you playing second base?" He's like, "It wasn't up to me. I mean, that's just the position I was playing." They put him at third base, and now Mike Ramazzotti, who I just mentioned earlier, calls him the athletic Max Muncy because he's really nimble over there, and I mean, he has the contact skills to be a good hitter from the left side, and he can play second base. He's not going to be a first or a shortstop, but he can give you second, first, a little bit of third. I saw Keith Law even list him as an outfielder at one point who works for the Athletic. That might
Uh-huh.
have been an accident. I don't necessarily think that he is a outfielder of the future. But another guy, Mickey Story, loves. I wrote an article about him as well. And a lot of these guys I'm talking about, there's an article or a interview out there for anyone that wants a little bit more information, but very bullish of Will Wagner. And Mickey Story's honest. He'll tell you He's not going to give you a lot of coach speak. He'll give you some things that people need to, that they're working on, what's not going right, what is going right.
Right.
And, he loves Will Wagner. He was like telling me, he's like, I'm excited because he coached him in the fall league last year. He was the manager for the surprise Segueros in 2022, where the
Mhm.
Astros prospects played. And he got to work with him there, got to work with him in big league camp when Will was invited. And now Will's going to get another invite this year. And with that invite, I think he can prove that maybe he is the guy who can be the second utility guy behind Dubon. Maybe
Oh,
he can jump Kessinger, jump Hensley on the 40 man, jump on the 40 man, and just be a contributor. But there is also the side that he needs more time in AAA. He is 25 years old now, and that short time, that 1 week in AAA, he won Player of the Week. So he was a very good hitter.
he's
Very
like, "Hold
strong
my beer.
performance.
Look
Yeah.
what I can do."
Yeah, look what he can do, and I think Will Wagner is going to be a guy you want to look out for as moving to down the line in the future. Joey Lopperfido, talk of the town, another good left-handed bat, a lot more power to him.
Uh-huh.
I mean, everyone should be excited about what Joey can bring offensively and defensively. Played a little bit more second base, and Joe Thon, who's the manager down there in Corpus, worked with him a little bit on that. Joe, who's a former infielder as well, he can give them all the pointers and help in the world that he can. And he was even said to Joey, I remember talking to him, he was like, even when things weren't going right, he was like, yeah, man, it's a new position. If you're going to make errors, just make them now. Don't make them down the line. We're going to, you're going to get better at this. When he plays the outfield, he said he plays like a safety. He loves it. He can play center field and right field. I think that's where the focus needs to be right now. Maybe down the
Okay.
line, he'll move into left. First base, also still a learning process for him.
Oh.
Watching him and Vladimir Sutil, who's the development coach down there in Sugarland, who does a lot of good stuff especially on the defensive side.
Uh-huh.
He working a lot on his footwork at first base. Didn't really have his foot placed right on the bag when balls were coming his way. Giving him a little bit more of a stretch. Everyone knows he is a bigger guy. I mean, taller guy in that sense. 6'4". I mean, pretty big frame there for Joey. And he's going to give you a lot of that stuff at different positions. And another guy that's going to come into big league camp this year, didn't have that opportunity last year, really broke on the scene, of course. Astros minor league player of the year. He's going to do something special. And that might not come in the majors right away. Maybe he needs some more time in AAA, but big league camp is going to be something that people need to keep their eyes on for him.
Okay, so you said Joey Lupperfido is center, right, second, and first?
Yeah, so he can play all the outfield positions. I just think
Okay.
center and right is what the focus is right now,
Okay.
just because that's what he played a lot near the end of the season in Double-A and when he got to Triple-A at the end of the year. So that's where I think the focus is. And talking with those guys as well is like he can play first base, he can play second. Just need to mix him in, make him more comfortable with it as well. And that might come with a little bit more time at big league camp and then AAA. And then if there's spot opens, I mean, he should be one of the first guys thought of.
Interesting. Okay. So now last season, one of the guys that broke onto the scene right at first was Justin Dearden, and then kind of fell off. What's he like?
I think it's one of those spring training darlings. We haven't really had one in a little while. Miles Straw used to be that spring training darling.
Okay.
I fell for it once. I thought, this guy's going to be a leadoff hitter because he was doing great. And you look at it, Yuli Gurriel had a great spring last year, and 2022 season just wasn't the Yuli you saw in 2021.
Right.
This past year, Justin Dearden, I thought he was going to make the roster, and then Corey Julks made it, and Cesar Salazar made it, and it was like, okay, maybe they know something, and they did. That played out a little bit better for them at the beginning of the season for the Astros. You look at Justin Dearden, though, he's on the older side. He is another guy that's going to be exposed to the Rule 5 draft because he
Okay.
was signed in 2020. He was an undrafted free agent. I don't think he gets protected. He really fell off, and he's a stubborn guy too because he wants to play. I mean, he wants to be out there.
Right.
At the end of the 2022 season, he kind of just got gassed. He got up to AAA. I mean, he killed Double-A. He was one of the best hitters in the Texas League last year. He should have been probably Texas League Player of the Year if he wasn't. I don't remember anymore, but one of the best players in Texas League for Corpus Christi in 2022. Got to AAA. A little bit tired. Had a daughter. I mean, family got bigger. A lot of stuff on his plate in September. Comes in the offseason. Works out, gets back into shape, conditions well, and comes into spring training. Awesome. I mean, we talked about that. And then just things didn't click, battled some injuries, something wrong with his leg. Is that in that thigh region, or not thigh, but quad of some sort.
Okay.
It was a minor injury, and then another thing happened at the end of the season that I never got information on. So, guy who's been through a lot last year, maybe he can turn it around a little bit on the older side still. But
Okay.
I think he's getting invited to Major League Camp if he's not protected, and I don't necessarily think he's going to get protected.
Interesting. Okay, so now let's move on to some of the minor league free agents. Now, if I think my first question was that if the minor leaguers choose free agency and they don't get picked up by anybody else, can they come back to us, or do we have to like re-sign them, or what's the deal there?
So a lot of these guys I'll use Joe Record for an example. Came over in
Uh-huh.
the Rule 5 draft,
Okay.
had a great season. I wrote about him too. Had a He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the middle of a great season. Lost a month of baseball, came back, still pitched well. Had one of the best sliders in the Pacific Coast League.
Oh,
Didn't get an opportunity at the end of the year. They didn't put him on there was no September call up. That was a prospect for the Astros. He was just left out to dry. Just continue to work in AAA. Get to the end of the season. He tells me, I'm going to be a free agent tomorrow. They're not going to select my contract and bring me up. That's like the same thing with JJ Matijevic. They were drafted in 2017. 2017 guys are now free agents. And it's a little bit different for guys that are signed internationally. I don't
mhm.
necessarily understand it because I made a full list of guys before the offseason started, went through every single roster and just picked the guys I remember, when they were drafted and checked on some other ones to see when it was. So anyone drafted or signed 2017 range or before that should have been free agents. Neri Rodriguez, who was a catcher in high A, missed the season again with an injury back-to-back years. I thought he was going to be a free agent. He isn't yet. Maybe they haven't done it or he hasn't elected free agency, but the contracts are up. It's either you elect free agency, they release you, or they select your contract, and put you on the 40-man, kind of that mix.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the Astros could re-sign Joe Record to a 1-year minor league deal. That's what all these minor league deals for the rest of these guys are going to be is either 1 year or 2 year. Usually the 2 year ones are for guys who had Tommy John or
Okay.
tore an ACL because they're going to miss most of the season, maybe come back at the end of the year, then they'll pitch the next season as well in the minors for that team. Um, I just don't I don't see it with a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys coming back. They didn't do it last year. There were some guys I thought maybe they would give, like Nick Hernandez, who's in the major leagues now for the Padres. Houston, born and raised, went to U of H from Sugarland. He didn't get an opportunity. Went to the Padres, got up to the majors. Good for him, but I just don't know if they'll do it. A lot of these guys, JJ Matijevic and Oli Paredes, they'll just look for opportunities elsewhere. They know that they're log jammed and they're not going to get an opportunity with the Astros. If there's another guy, maybe a little bit lower in Double A that they lost, Dimiski Taveras, who's pitching in lead dom right now. Maybe they liked what they saw from him. He started pitching a little bit more multi innings. He's a big guy too, 6'5". Maybe they give him a look to
Okay.
come back, but I necessarily don't think so. I think most of these might have been made, or you'll see a lot more minor league signings in like January.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was confused on that because I was
Mhm.
like, do they just like magically come back into the system? Do we have to sign them again? But thank you. So, Corey Julks was up with the club pretty much all season and then got sent back down. What's his status then? Is he still on the No, he's not on the 40 man, or is he on the 40 man?
Yeah, so he's still in the 40 man. He's just a
Okay.
depth guy at the moment.
Okay.
Fortunate. Yeah, he's another guy that kind of log jammed behind Jake Myers, and Michael Brantley came back, and Chas McCormick was playing well in center field. Really not many opportunities. Some people don't know this. He played a lot of third base in AAA last year. Looked like it was that position addition, trying to get him some more um, a little bit more depth to him. He didn't play that in the majors. I think he's just a 4A guy at this point. He does have a lot of
Gotcha.
power, a good amount of speed, and we saw that in AAA. Saw it a little bit in the majors. He did have a good stretch there at the beginning of the season. I just consider him more of a depth guy. I don't necessarily think unless he comes into camp next year just totally reworked.
Mhm.
Maybe there's an opportunity that he just pushes himself past Jake Myers and makes it on there. And we know Dana Brown talked about that he wants a lot of younger guys to step up. Outfield
Yeah.
is not necessarily a point of interest this offseason that they need to address like drastically. So
Right.
maybe that there's guys like Joey Loperfido that we mentioned, even Justin Dearden, if he turns it around in camp next year and proves the Astros, that he can consistently hit again. Guys like that maybe step up, and you don't really have to pay or throw a lot of money at a guy like Michael Brantley, who unfortunately did have a lot of setbacks. You don't want to waste just money on a older guy
Okay.
like that. Maybe you can find something in the younger guys.
Right. So, do you think then, are the the catching position will be actually signed and not brought up, say, from our minor league system?
Yeah, I do like that idea that you're gonna find someone on the market. I don't really look at major league stuff as much anymore. I'll
Okay.
talk about Yainer Diaz and Cesar Salazar. Yainer Diaz isn't a prospect anymore, but he just finished up his rookie year and still on the younger side. I think you still need someone in that veteran age, 4 or 5 seasons. Someone very defensive oriented as well. You don't need a big bat. You think like Jason
Austin Hedges,
Castro,
come on
Austin
down.
Hedges. I mean, like, I'm not saying get Jason Castro out of retirement. I'm just saying like
Right.
someone like that when you look back at like the last couple seasons, necessarily he wasn't the best hitter in 2022, but maybe he graded out a little bit better defensively. Something like that you can probably think about. Someone that can still like teach Yainer a little bit too.
Gotcha.
Still on the younger side, and we know that. And we know that he's taken steps forward defensively. Still a lot to learn. I mean, Fit just finished his first full season, played
Right.
really well, but still a lot to learn defensively at the catcher position. And I think that's what they should do. I don't necessarily. I'd say Cesar Salazar, very good defensive catcher. A lot of the people in the organization love him. They think of
Mhm.
him as a journeyman catcher and that
Okay.
guy that can be a personal catcher, defensive first, big leaguer. Doesn't really have the bat to do it,
Mhm.
but also the experience to just come up. I don't think that they would do that if it really comes down to it. I think he's a good guy to have on the 40-man roster, though.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so, we know that there are oodles and noodles of starting pitching that we have on on the big league roster, which means maybe moving somebody into the bullpen, but with relief pitchers going into free agency, Brian Stanek, Phil Maton, Hector Neris. Is there anyone, pitching wise that you think can come up and fill in those roles? Or, I mean, obviously we have JP France and Hunter Brown that are question marks on if they're going to start or if they're going to be relief. But is there anybody else, technically, I guess, ready to even come up or entertain that idea?
Yeah, every pitch on the 40-man at the moment, besides Forrest Whitley, who's ended up never coming back from that injury, hasn't pitched in the major leagues. Have their cup of coffee. Brandon Bielak's an interesting case to me. He's out of options, and
Okay.
you're not going to non-tender the guy. I mean, I think he's an ARB now. I mean, I told you I don't really look into all that stuff. 'Cause it's more major league stuff. But I mean, you're not going to DFA him either. And
Right.
it's not bad to have depth going into spring training, especially if he's not going to make the roster. Then you find a way to trade him. You find a way to remove him from the 40-man because you have to either put him on the team or you can't. And
Right.
I think Brandon Bielak has shown that he can play. I mean, he can pitch at the major league level. Maybe it's not with the Astros. Maybe he's a back end rotation guy with the Pirates. I mean, maybe there's a team out
The
there that
Pirates.
I mean, just a team that's rebuilding. I
Yeah.
think that's something that maybe teams might be interested in Brandon Bielak. Just bring him in, maybe a sixth guy, maybe a long reliever, just with
Mhm.
another team if he doesn't break with the Astros. He's an interesting guy going to the camp, especially without the options left. Uh,
So, could
oth-
we are you thinking maybe would he be able to be, like, trade bait for obviously not like a one for one, but, like, packaged with somebody, like, to say, like, the St. Louis Cardinals or something like that because they obviously need starting pitching, so
Yeah, that's a good one. I was kind of thinking about that too. Mostly because I do write about some Cardinal stuff, and so I
Oh,
was just
okay.
thinking about him in a Cardinals uniform for some reason. But yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Maybe he's traded for a guy in Single A that they like.
Okay,
You see it with
okay.
Yainer Diaz. I mean,
Right.
gets thrown into the Maton trade. Maybe he was the focus because they just really liked him. He turned out to be a guy who's going to receive Rookie of the Year votes, and that's something that the Astros have done well. Kennedy Corona tossed into that deal back in 2020. We talked about him earlier for Jake Marisnick.
Mhm.
Happens all the time. They always find these steals. And even when the people in the front office change, the minds change about where their focus is and who they want to protect and who's going to move this fast, who's not going to move. We want to keep this guy in Double A. Maybe he'll skip Triple A someday. It's just always changing. But yeah, I think maybe down the line that Brandon Bielak there isn't a spot for him anymore, even in the bullpen, and
Gotcha.
they have Lance come back and Luis Garcia's back. You can maybe trade a guy, especially to keep the 40-man roster steady. Maybe you trade him, get a guy from high A or single A, some pitcher, outfielder that just intrigues you.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so you said like Spencer Arrighetti, I know has been a name that had been tossed about. Now he is in AAA, correct?
Yes, so Spencer of Colton Gordon and Rhett Koba, the three-headed monster. A lot of people that follow me like to reply with like the Braves memes of Smoltz and all those
Oh,
guys and
okay.
Maddox. and I
And
thought that
Glavin,
was
okay.
Glavin, and I thought that was really funny, because it's like it's just it's exciting for a lot of fans. Great group of guys there, lefty and two righties, and like I said, I don't think Rekoba's there yet.
Uh-huh.
Still needs to build up that inning count, but he prided himself on just consistent strikes and not walking batters. Struggled a little bit in that jump to AAA, kind of got into his head and just was losing the ball, losing his command a little bit. Got back on track at the end of his time in Sugarland. Guy, he's going to be invited to spring training. We put him just on the side though, let him continue to develop. Colton Gordon,
Okay.
unbelievable what the Astros got in him. Drafted a guy who just had Tommy John out of Central Florida back in 2021. Came back in 2022 in the middle of the summer, destroyed single A and high A like it was nothing. Comes into double A this year, does the same thing. One of the best pitchers in the Texas League. Strong lefty. Really, really good guy as well. I mean, he pitched in the WBC. He pitched for Israel, the WBC. He has that experience behind
Oh,
him.
okay.
So there's that for him. But Spencer Aggetti of those three is probably the most ready. Even though Colton Gordon might have a little bit of an edge if you think about it because he's left-handed. But Spencer Aggetti's had the most experience in AAA. None of these guys are real fireballers, but they command the zone well. Everybody's adding a cutter these days in the Astro system. It's a pitcher to always keep an eye on. But Spencer Aggetti is probably the guy you think is the first guy up as depth. And even in September, people are asking me and his family, is he getting called up? He's getting called up. I was like, that's a question for me to ask you. And so,
Right? You're like,
yeah,
well.
you're supposed to tell me that, but no, it's he had a strong end of AAA. Of course, he really turned it around after that rocky first month in Double A, and he's the first guy to probably going to be come up if you really want to think about it. Who else? Maybe Misael Tamarez, but that's the guy I would keep an eye on, especially going into camp.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Kenny, I think we are going to cut it off here. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time and coming on the show. And um, can you tell the people um, anything else that you would like to chat about?
I do have one more thing, and I felt bad that I totally glossed over this. We talked about the pitchers,
Uh-huh.
Arizona Fall League. I talked about Tyler Guilfoyle really turning it around. Guy who worked on his mechanics, added the cutter, added the slider. He's pitching well. His last start today on Thursday. Behind him is AJ Blueball, who was the
Mhm.
only Fall League star, which I actually got the opportunity to vote on that stuff, and that was really cool to see. Look through all these stats about what these players are doing, and AJ Blueball was a guy I voted for because, I mean, not trying to show bias or anything towards the guys that I'm covering, but just a very strong performance right now in the fall
Uh-huh.
league. And he threw one pitch in the Fall Stars game, got the save, and he got a ground out to end it. Um, and I texted with him, and he texted me. He was like, I was like, what pitch was it? He's like, fastball, of course. I mean, that's what I throw. And
Duh.
so he threw it, and so he has 15 strikeouts in 11 innings right now,
Oh,
2.45
wow.
ERA, and only 4 walks is the main thing I want to touch on. And I think AJ Blueball is the fastest rising pitcher from the Astros 2022 class. Got up to Double A this year. Him and Logan Van Wy, who got up to AAA, but he was a UDFA. The two guys I would keep an eye on, and two guys I think maybe are making a run at a non-roster invite, especially with how Blue Ball pitched in the fall league. Maybe there's not a space for them this year. Another guy I want to hit on is Ray Gaither, who finished the fall league in his last outing on Tuesday with a 1 ERA
Oh,
in 9 relief
dang.
appearances. You can look at the walks. Yes, he does struggle with walks. He strikes out more guys than innings pitched, but I think he likes pitching with guys on. I talked with him about this.
Uh-huh.
He's another guy who I think solidified a spot as a not NRI, a non-roster invite, and a guy who started the season with another injury, made a full-time reliever, throws hard,
Uh-huh.
big strong body on the mound, and the scouts still like him. They like what they're seeing from him. But for Ray, it's like guys get on and he just locks in. They're like not even there for him. And that's the thing
Interesting.
to keep an eye on for Ray Gaither is that he's probably going to be in AAA to start next season. Nice, strong reliever. I wasn't expecting this. And then a scout told me he was going and looked more into it. I was like, wow, he's having a really great second half. And him and AJ Blueball were probably the two best pitchers. Miguel Uola struggled a lot like he did this season. Had a better last outing, but still threw a lot of balls. The command's really lost for him. Maybe he's working on something in the fall league. Never got a chance to speak with him, but he's a guy that everyone was excited about in 2022, coming to 2023 into high A, and it's a little bit shaky. Still on the younger side, still a good project for the Astros to try to turn around. And
Okay.
that's the rest
I
of the
have
fall.
I have a question on Ray.
Okay.
So you said that he pitches better with, like, men on. Is it like a
Yes.
Blake Snell situation where he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna just put you on. You're not gonna score anyways, and I'm gonna just go after this next guy." Is it kinda that type of thing, or is it just, like, extra adrenaline knowing that somebody else is on base?
I think the latter, and
Okay.
that's, like, talking with him, he kinda thought about it. He was like, I think it's just, like, it makes it like, the feeling of the adrenaline, coming
Okay.
into it. It's like you're trying to put them away. Stranding runners is just like probably a great feeling to him. It was like
Yeah.
a question I asked him, and he's kind of to think about it because it's like I don't know, kind of just work better with it. And people say it's luck. I watch him pitch, and it's just like his laser focus, just right there. And a lot of guys are like that, but kind of like a killer instinct the way he just approaches the mound. And like I said, big tall frame out there, and he just throws hard. I mean, he's probably of the guys that are there, him or Blue Ball is probably throwing the
Mhm.
hardest amongst the Astros prospects. Even I didn't see any of Ulola's TrackMan, or I don't see that stuff, but more of just the velocity on the Statcast.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see that, but he's another guy that throws really fast, but are hard. But I do like what Gaither did in the fall league, just commanding the base paths and not letting anyone score, and that was the biggest thing I took away from him.
So, is he one of the guys that pitches out of the stretch when there's a guy on?
Yeah,
And then so
it's
he does change, okay.
yeah.
So, who I can't remember who it was. Your dog obviously wants to let me know as well. But there was someone that when there's guys on, they pitch worse because they gotta pitch out of the stretch, and then finally they were like, "Just pitch," or,
Mhm.
it was reverse, sorry, they're like, "Just pitch out of the stretch all the time, regardless of if there's a guy on or not, just pitch out of the stretch," and then all of a sudden, like, magically, his numbers got better. So but no, you're thinking that it's literally just, like, that kinda extra adrenaline, like, "No, there's a guy on, I'm not gonna let him score," and just
Yeah,
that.
I think he'd make a great mop-up guy, and I think that's what
Okay.
he likes to be. It's like he came into situations where they weren't his runners either,
Oh,
and he
okay.
walks someone and then gets a double play, and that's just what he does. And I don't know, it's just I think he really put himself on the map. And another guy that went undrafted. I mean, he was a pretty hyped guy out of high school. Battled a lot of injuries at Dallas Baptist, not a lot, but he had Tommy John and a couple setbacks, and really turned it around in his last season. Came into the Astro system as a starter, got banged up, just really didn't have the longevity for it. He does a lot during the offseason. He admitted that to me. He was like, I probably work out too hard, and I'm probably putting too much toll on my body, because you're trying to get more velocity in the offseason. That's the goal as
Gotcha.
well. So it's not just conditioning. It's about, how can I get more velocity before I get to camp? And so he's really taken a step back, and he knows that his future is as a reliever. And I think he put himself on the map. And guy that's similar to that was Matt Rupenthal back in 2022.
Mhm.
He actually elected free agency, was a 2017 draftee, but he went to the fall league, got some extra innings behind him, looked a lot stronger. He was a fall league fall star as well, and played well for him, but ended up not making it to the majors though with the Astros.
Interesting, okay. Yeah, working out too hard is not a thing that I would ever know because I don't that's not a thing that I do. So the you will never catch me, A,
Mhm.
working out and definitely not working out too hard. So that's no, absolutely not. Um, well, Kenny, tell the people where they can find you on the socials and all your articles and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, X. I know you don't want to call it that, but for those who might not know, it's called X now. But I'm at the
Um, I'm an
Vandalorian.
I'm an elder millennial. I don't do change well, okay? It will
I
always be
gotcha.
Twitter, always be
Yeah,
Twitter.
I gotcha. And I mean, I've been through a lot of change as well. I would say I'm only 23, but I've seen a lot of the world change. But yeah, one thing I just want to throw out there: Rule 5 draft is December 6th. No one hit me up that day. That's like my Christmas, so I'm gonna be deep into that stuff, and I'll tweet stuff at the Vandalorian. If you're not watching on the video right now, it's below my face. But we have the Astros Future podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a little bit on YouTube as well. Sometimes we'll have the video interview for available. And then everything else is on astrosfuture.com with Jimmy Price. We'll have future stories. Jimmy does a lot of the recapping. So if you don't get to watch any of the games because you don't have the streams or don't want to check the box scores, he puts everything into a recap, and he's doing his season recaps as well. So you can check those out. And right now, I think we're going to get back into just the podcasting version. So give a little bit more people some audio options.
Perfect, okay, and I will put all of the links to all of that stuff in the episode description, so you can, feel free to click on any of those. Definitely go follow, Kenny on on Twitter. Again, it will always be Twitter because X is a drug that I never actually took in college. So, I can't ever call it X. It's not a thing. So, Kenny, again, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me about all of my dumb questions about the AFL and the Rule 5 draft. And I feel smarter talking to you, and I appreciate you. So, with that, I will say goodbye. All of the peoples, rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate all of that fun stuff. And we are going to say goodbye. Yay, baseball. I'm going to hit end record now. Maybe.